Okay, that is slothful procrastination. Now, let's look at the other root cause of procrastination, which is fearful procrastination. This one works just a little bit differently. What's the focus of a fearful person when they procrastinate? Well, to this person, everything appears unpleasant. Ooh, I'm not sure I want to do that. Somebody might not like me if I do that. What if I mess up? What if things go wrong? And so the fearful person will never experience God's best for their life because they're continually held back by that spirit of fearfulness. What are the rationalizations of a fearful person? Well, this first one is a very common one, and that is the idea of perfectionism. Perfectionism is when we say, yeah, I know the boss wanted that report in today, but I'm not sure I got time to really do a good one like he wanted. If I waited until about next weekend to work on it, yeah, then I'll have some time. Have you ever found yourself thinking that way? And what we're saying here is because I cannot do this thing perfectly, I'm just not going to do it at all. And again, that just doesn't make a lot of sense if you really stop and think it through. What we need instead on any project God sends our way, big or small, is some type of a freeze point. Let me explain. If the state of Indiana wanted to build a bridge across a river around here somewhere, they would contract out with a private firm to do it. Now, that firm would then send some surveyors and some engineers out to the location, and those fellows would go out there and they'd start taking all of their measurements, and then they'd come back and they'd start plugging all of that data into their computers, or maybe they'd make a great big blueprint of it up here on the wall. And those engineers would continue to refine and tinker with that design in their attempt to make the absolute perfect bridge for that location. But there is going to come a day when the management of the firm will walk into the engineer's office and say, okay, fellas, today is the freeze point, and whatever design you have today is what we're going to build. And at that point, they freeze the design. They send the work crews out to actually start digging those holes and building that bridge. Now, here's the point. Again, every project God sends our way simply has to have that freeze point, because what happens when we're fearful is we look at this thing, we think about this thing, we might even be real spiritual and pray about this thing, but we never go ahead and start doing the thing God called us to do. Here's the little one-liner to remember on this point. Don't shoot for perfection, just shoot for excellence and go ahead and get something done. Isn't that a whole lot better? I mean, perfection matters in very few things. Maybe parachutes and airplane landing gear. Yeah, if I'm going to use those, I'd like for them to work perfectly, wouldn't you? But outside of that, it's usually a whole lot better to just go ahead and get something going, even if you cannot do it perfectly. Now, there's another rationalization that we sometimes use when we're a little fearful, and that is we will substitute activity for accomplishment. Activity without accomplishment. You see, the devil is going to fill your life and mine with activity. Even lots of good activities, as long as it's not God's best activity. Let me illustrate this point through the story of the processionary caterpillar. Now, the processionary caterpillar is a little creature that gets its name from the fact that these caterpillars will always follow the caterpillar directly in front of them. In other words, if you were to see them going down through the grass, they would one follow the other like a little freight train, sort of like in the picture we have up here, each one following the caterpillar directly in front of him. Now, let's suppose for a moment that I were to have some processionary caterpillars with me up here, and I were to put them around the edge of this little plastic bowl so that one followed the other, and they made a perfect circle, each one following the caterpillar directly in front of him. What do you suppose would happen to those processionary caterpillars? Anybody want to take a guess? What do you think would happen? Okay, that's right. They would literally follow one another round and around and around until they would die of starvation and exhaustion. Even if right here in the middle of this bowl, I were to put some nice green pine needles, which are a favorite food of the processionary caterpillar. Now, folks, that's a little illustration for you right there of activity without accomplishment. Anybody here ever felt like that little caterpillar at the end of your day? You went round and round and round, but you never quite got your pine needles. Well, that's because we substitute activity, something to keep us busy, for accomplishment. The one thing God really wanted us to do with our time that day.